What's happening, Hardscapers? This is episode 336 of the How to Hardscape podcast, where we talk about how you can start and grow your hardscaping business. And on today's episode, we have our last roundup episode of the year, taking sound bites from our Hardscape business owner interviews from 2025. And this one is specifically answering the question, do you have a horror story that you've experienced in your time in business? I always preface this with our interviewees to just let them know that we're not here to try to burn them, but more so to help our audience know what can go wrong on a job site, dealing with a client, dealing with employees, and maybe perhaps put guardrails in place to help us as business owners know what could go wrong and prevent them in the future. We've had some amazing responses throughout the years of the How to Hardscape podcast, and this year definitely did not disappoint as well. So thank you to our guests for answering these questions and being very transparent with us of what can go wrong. But before we get into today's episode, we want to say thank you to our sponsors. Cycle CPA. If you're looking for bookkeeping, accounting, CFO services, reach out to Cycle CPA at cyclecpa.com. Let them know How to Hardscape sent you for money off their services there. Patio SEO has hopped on board as a sponsor, and they are a leading marketing and brand building company in the hardscape industry. And if you don't know, this company is run by James Reed. We've had him on the podcast a couple of times, some of our more popular episodes, and he owns hardscape businesses across the country. And now you can have access to the same in-house marketing team that he has access to at patioseo.com. So if you're looking for a killer website, targeted ads, or data-driven strategies to grow, check them out at patioseo.com. And Knowledge Tree Consulting. George and Peter there are efficiency consultants in our industry, and I've had the privilege of having them both on one episode of the How to Hardscape podcast, and George multiple other times. Always great episodes, and I also got to sit down on a one-on-one with George and went through what they do for businesses, and I left that meeting with a lot of value, so I can't recommend them enough. If you want to learn more about what they do, go to knowledgetreeconsulting.com and get that conversation started with them today. Hey, if you're looking for a software to dive into this off-season, we have a limited offer for the How to Hardscape headquarters software. This is if you sign up with us before 2026 and you complete our onboarding within 30 days, we're going to give you 6 months for free. Now, I can't hold this for long, so we do have limited spots, and that's just based on how many we can handle in our onboarding process at once. But if this is your time for the off season to dive into a software to get started for the spring, this is your offer. On board with us within 30 days and you get 6 months free, and that is if you sign up before the end of 2026. The software helps you budget, estimate job costs, time track, schedule chat groups for your employees for projects or just general chat groups, courses. You do have access to our course content library that's installing interlocking concrete pavement, segmental retaining walls, and a few other courses that you can actually use for training and onboarding purposes, or you can create your own courses for your employees. Think onboarding and ongoing training for them. And we have so many more exciting features that are already in the software and additionally coming in the future. Message me on Instagram at How to Hardscape if you want to take advantage of that, or go to the link in the show notes. That's hthheadquarters.com to learn more and book a demo. And without further ado, let's get into today's episode. This is Kyle Henderson, the Christian Hardscaper. Kyle, a horror story that you've experienced in your time in business. This could also be working for other businesses as well. It could be business related, client related, anything at all that can help our audience kind of understand what could happen in our industry here. But do you have a horror story that you'd want to share?
You know, believe it or not, and it's not because I wouldn't want to share it if I had it, I don't have anything that's like completely horrible. I've been in a lot of situations where like a lot of crap hit the fan on jobs, but nothing that like really stands out to where like, oh my gosh, that was an absolute nightmare. There's been a lot of projects I was on working for other companies where, you know, it goes back to what we're talking about, communication with the customer and everything. But a lot of these bigger companies, when you're selling these jobs, you go out and you sell them, not spending much time with the customer, already. And then you're going back to a project you sold 6 months ago. You're trying to remember the details that you talked with the customer about for like 45 minutes to an hour. Then when you put the quote together, it wasn't as informative as you should have because now you've forgotten what you talked about. So when I was a foreman, I'd always be going on to projects, and I'm in the middle of the my boss who sold the project, who is just not really aware of what's going on, and the customer who's not really aware of what's going on can't get a hold of the guy that sold them the job. So I got to be like a mediator. That's something that I was always in the middle of. I was always in the middle of figuring out all the issues and putting the fires out on the job so that my boss wouldn't have to come. He wouldn't have to come talk to the customer. I would just take it in my own hands and solve the problems. And even that's something that kind of drove me to running my own business because I'm on these big hardscape installs, managing the project, installing the project, being the foreman of my laborers. Just a lot of effort. And I'm like, I can do this on my own. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I can do this on my own to a certain extent. I can't run a 30 employee plus business, but I can run a hardscape business, within one crew on my own for sure. And I
Absolutely.
think just all those little horror stories added up. There wasn't one big horror story, just a lot of small nightmares.
This is Graham from Instagramski. I want to talk about how you mentioned the fire in Northern California and it taking your tools, your equipment, basically your business besides yourself there. How do you rebound from something like that, especially in the moment, and then the following moments after that, in deciding to kind of continue wherever you did continue next there?
Yes. So I mean, I was fortunate. My client, like I had insurance, but I didn't have fire insurance for my business. So I was storing all of my equipment inside like a building that was attached to the house of the homeowner, and I like even had like a couple like a machine that was like parked in a garage. So everything was actually physically in his structure when it burned down. So he was able to claim it under his homeowner's policy. And, so I got super lucky. So it still took like 6 months. And, that's a good question because I'm always trying to explain to people that period of my life was like, it like decimated me. Like that fire set me back 5 years, like no doubt. Like I went from like thinking I was on like, feeling like I was doing the best that I'd ever done to be feeling like I was doing the worst that I ever done. And like, just a matter of a couple like weeks. Do you know what I'm saying? So it's like I just bought like a brand. You know what the thing is that fire. I was 2/3 through a job, and you know how like you realize a lot of your profit with your last check, and it's like that last check was never realized. Do you know what I'm saying? So like that job just ended, and like my best case scenario was get 70% value for my tools back. You know what I'm saying? So that period I went into debt, just like commercial debt. It's like, and I actually went back to Hawaii, did some jobs there, and then I got another job in Northern California, like I was saying, and I tried to stick it out through COVID, but like fire COVID was 1-2 punch there for me. It was like California it has been a tough place to exist. My sister, she's been just this past couple of weeks helping me with childcare in Spain, but she left LA from the fires. So Northern, so it's just like a tough place to be doing business, even though there's like so much work there. Do you know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
but taxes are super high. It's a lot of environmental restrictions. It's like I was recently there couple months ago doing a stone hot tub, and I tried to go to the dump, and I didn't have like a safety vest and eye goggles, and they're like, "Can't come in," and I'm like, "Live free or die." It's like, so yeah, I forgot the original. Oh yeah, it was about the customers and stuff, and like the fire. So after that point, I came back to New Hampshire, and this is where I keep coming back to New Hampshire in the story because it's kind of like where my biggest network of clients and people that I work with is. So it's easiest for me to kind of like just always have easier work here and use it as a home base to go off and do a travel project. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it was like that's when I'm here, it's easier for me to shoot off for a few weeks and stuff like that. But yeah. The weird thing about the fire is like so my sister has had some success in the film industry, and her and I did a short film in Northern California, like in early 2020, about like it had the actor Dylan McDermott in it and his daughter, and it was like a 13-minute short film about like a father and daughter who had like gone through a Northern California wildfire. So I'd also invested a fair amount of money at that time in like producing that short film and getting that out into film festivals, and so that like I was like really overextended when the fire hit me. So it was like it but like at this point being distanced from it, like the toughness that I had to have in those years doing business after that, like really going back to being like, oh man, I have to really focus on like getting new clients, making sure I'm busy, like because my schedule just my whole life just changed rapidly fast. So it was really I feel like I grew a ton in that period. I got a lot better at my trade in that period. I had to go and work for other people after being the boss for a long time. So it was like, it was just a very like it's good to be humbled every so often, you know.
Right. Is that where the Drinkwater Studios comes into play?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Got
So
it.
my sister and I, it's like, and I'm supporting another small film as like an executive producer right now. That's like I did not create or start from scratch, but the thing is COVID canceled like a year and a half of film festivals, and like so it was not only that fire like screwed up like that my big building like COVID screwed up like this 2-year film festival plan that we had to promote it, and we had like an amazing festival run and a lot of critical success, and like we will do some more stuff in the future, but it's like just not it's not lucrative when you're at this point. It's like a huge it's like that's like a whole other thing. It's just like so much money to like get going in that industry, and it was I don't regret doing it, but it was a very but the thing is how I can relate this to what we're talking about is the executive producer role is so much like a general contractor role, because on the set of like a film it's like there's the head of the lighting, this head subcontractor, the head of the photography, makeup, blah blah blah, and they all come, and then you have these meetings and they all kind of go back to the subs and they do their own jobs, and there's a budget, and like the parallel of the executive producer role to being like the head of a project was like I had no idea how much it was going to help me when we were like doing the shooting of the film itself. It was really, really fascinating. I didn't anticipate all the overlap, but that role was very similar in how you had to like just interact with people and organize things, and but even the buildings of the sets, stuff like that physically. So
Yeah, I mean, I think that period really speaks to your resiliency, and I ask this question to every business owner that comes on, but you may have already answered it here, or perhaps you have another story you'd want to share. I ask a horror story that you've experienced in business. The reason why I ask that is just to help younger contractors just getting in, like what could happen, and perhaps put some guardrails in place to prevent it from happening to them, or prepare them for that. But do you have another horror story that you'd want to
yeah,
share?
yeah, yeah. No, I'm built on horror stories. Like, yeah,
Okay.
I like. So I was doing. I had this really famous author client in Hawaii, and I'd done 5 or 6 smaller projects for them, and they had me. I'm by no means like a concrete expert. Like I pour concrete sometimes. I do a lot of footers. I don't finish concrete at all. So anyway, I do like all these like concrete walkways around their house and like a concrete driveway, and I like was there. I flew like 4 or 5 people from New England who do concrete, and I borrowed my buddy's laser, and I like laid the whole thing out, and like the laser wasn't calibrated, and then I poured like 50 yards of concrete, and like everything was pitched wrong and the drainage was wrong. So it's just like why I say that is like don't like skip all like the little small steps. Don't get cocky. Like don't think you're like just like any little thing can bite you. Just like be like willing to do the laborer's job if you're the boss. Do you know what I mean? Double check things. Like I don't know. Just like don't. The mistakes I've made have been like little weird simple things like that could have been avoided, or just like rushing like. So I don't know what the exact lesson is there, but that's just a horror story that I remember. When you
Definitely.
say horror story, so I ended up having to fix it, and I didn't get any more money for fixing it.
Yeah,
So, but it's like, yeah. So I don't know, just do dot all your I's, cross your T's, I guess.
gotcha. This is Trevor from Gorman Landscapes. A horror story you've experienced in business. It doesn't have to be this business. It could be other businesses that you worked for that you experienced something. But this is more so to help those just starting out to understand what can happen in our industry and maybe put guardrails in place to prevent it from happening. But have you ever had a horror story from your time in business or working for others that you'd want to
Yeah,
share?
no, for sure. And I've heard some of the funnest horror stories on your podcast. Like, I think you should do like a bit of a like an AMA Ask Me Anything episode where it's just like contractor horror stories that you've already recorded because I think they're fantastic. Guys like me can relate to them, or it's just it hits us deep in our chest and go, no, no. So some pretty funny stuff out there. Honestly, we've been pretty lucky. I think I wouldn't call it a horror story, but something that I definitely learned. You know, we installed a big, beautiful back patio for a client. We used like a very ebony charcoal 2x2 hydro slab, which can be pretty pedestrian in a lot of settings, but the scale at which we did it, it was just huge, gorgeous, well-sloped patio in ebony and charcoal. Wow, looked great. Well, three stones in the middle had efflorescence. And he's like, what's this? I don't know if efflorescence is as big a problem out there for you guys that it is out
Oh, yeah.
here.
Oh, yeah.
So I just went, well, quite simply, it's efflorescence. This is the problem. We're in the middle of October. It's wet. These stones have been on the pallet wet. When it dries out, that's when we come by and we service it and we clean the efflorescence, remove it, and seal the stones. Like, no problem, sir. It's an easy problem for me to solve. It's just we're going to readdress it in spring. And he was like, no, I don't, just replace them now. And I'm like, well, it's a lot of work. It's in the middle of the pad. And like, I'd rather not. And again, here's some literature to let you know. No, I need you. I demand. And he starts using very strong words. And so I don't often let my ego get in the way of these things, but the more I'm like, oh, you demand. And so my chest is puffing up a little bit. Well, don't you say. So anyways, we came to a point where I just went, look, there's a really great, easy solution for me to service. I think I've provided all the value I can in confidence and literature. We're not going to replace those right now because professionally as a business, we got a really great solution for you in the spring. So, and he owed me, it's my first year of business. I think he owed me $1,800. I never collected that $1,800. And I look back and I go, not worth it for me at all. I should have just went, well, you know, I just was the first year. I just sit with my accountant and go, so what are we calling this? Lost revenue? I'm like, I guess, because I can't go back to it. So we've been pretty lucky. I think the other side of things with equipment, where we are is literally cut out of the side of a mountain. So every project that I have to do, I mean, it's not unusual for me going into a backyard to have to figure out how to navigate like 18 steps or 3 flights of stairs to get into a backyard. So how do you get a bobcat or an excavator back there? We've had to preload boulder walls that are 4 feet high with 3 yards of gravel just to make a ramp to get in and out for 2 weeks, right? So there's never any soft ground. So we were crawling an excavator back into a backyard, and I thought I had everything worked out. And as we were going over top of a below ground window well, so builders have these exposed in order for people to have safe egress for fire. And I'm essentially driving a 4,000-pound excavator across a hole that's almost big enough for the excavator to fall. Just disaster. And I just felt something and everybody just stopped. And anyways, we got our way out of it. No disaster happened, but it's moments like those I'm going, I chomped at the bit a little too quickly, going, this has to happen. Like bull in a china shop, just go forward, just go. And that could have been pretty bad for my own personal safety. I mean, I was at the point where I was telling the crew, like, don't look at me, don't try to save me, don't try to grab the excavator, like just stay out of the way. So thankfully we haven't any huge disasters. But yeah, they're definitely out there for sure.
We want to take a break from today's episode to thank our sponsor, Cycle CPA. It's crucial to review your financial statements on a monthly basis so you can diagnose areas for improving your business's financial health early before they become significant issues. Too many contractors wait until the end of the year to review their financials as they file taxes, when it's often too late to take action to change the outcome. Cycle CPA not only handles bookkeeping and taxes, but they also ensure that you're armed with financial data on a monthly basis to make key business decisions. They offer benchmarking, cash flow forecasting, and assistance in developing targets for financial metrics. With their team of accountants specialized in the hardscape and landscape industry, they currently work with hundreds of companies in this field. Visit cyclecpa.com, and for $200 off, mention the How to Hardscape podcast. Now back to our episode. We want to take a break from today's episode to talk about marketing. Are you looking to take your hardscape business to the next level? Well, this is brought to you by Patio SEO, the leading marketing and brand building company in the hardscape industry. And if you don't know, this company is run by James Reed, who owns multiple hardscape businesses across the country. And here's the kicker. You're not just getting access to any team. You're getting access to the very team that helped grow James's own companies, plus hundreds of others in the industry. Whether you need a killer website, targeted ads, or data-driven strategies to grow, Patio SEO has got you covered. They've been in your shoes and know exactly what works. We've had James Reed on the podcast a couple of times, and they're some of our more popular episodes, talking about branding, talking about how he's built companies across the country. And with that, he needs lots of leads, which means he's had to perfect his branding and marketing. And now you can have access to that same in-house team that he has access to for his own hardscape company. So if you're ready to build your brand and see some serious growth, check them out at patioseo.com. That's patioseo.com, or follow James on Instagram at road to 100ms. That's road to 100ms. Let's get your business the attention it deserves. Now back to the episode. This is Steve from Steve Griggs Design. I want to ask you this next question, mostly to help our audience just starting out, or even actually, young in their business, to know what can happen to us. And I ask you a horror story in your time in many years in business here, Steve. Once again, just to help out our guys just starting out.
So a lot of your guys are very new, right? They're new guys, young.
I would say a lot of people are in 1-2 crews in the starting out in business.
Yeah. So if you're really new, start out, absolutely make sure you have insurance. Don't do it. Don't do it, because I know a lot of you guys do it. They try to skate around insurance. Sooner or later, you're going to need an attorney and something's going to happen. I'm just telling you. If that doesn't happen, then you're not a businessman. Sooner or later, you're going to have something go wrong, and it's going to bite you in the ass. So spend a couple bucks and just get the right attorney. Make sure you have decent contracts. Again, it's really against your word. You don't never want to have to. It never gets to that point where you have to go head to head with a contract and all. But just have some paperwork in order and make sure you get paid on time, and just do your due diligence and be a responsible business owner, right? Put that aside, right? So that's part of it. Second thing is horror stories, like the time we laid concrete in New York City and the freaking people are on their phones. They just walk right through the concrete. I had to rip it out. Cost me $80,000. I mean, or a wall falls down with the mudslide. Like it just goes on and on. Like, I mean, yeah, you just try to so you're trying to, I think it's being a contractor and you're trying to minimize your risk, right? To try to do all you can to minimize your risk. I mean, things are going to happen. It's just part of it, but you try to do as much as you can to minimize it. Oh yeah, the caution tape up and everything. They just walk right through it. So next time we got to put barriers up. Okay. So you learn, right? You try to learn from your mistakes.
Right. How do you tackle like an $80,000 mistake like that, or not even a mistake, somebody else caused it? What do you do in the moment, and how do you move past that?
So we had an 8-foot wall fall down on a residential property, and interlocking wall fell down, bad rain fell down, whatever. The guy didn't put enough, whatever happened, gravel, hydrostatic pressure, the wall fell, mudslide, filled up his pool with mud. I had to drain the pool, fix the wall, and go through that whole nonsense. So the first thing you want to do, you call them up and you say, listen, you don't want to come here this weekend. It's his weekend house. There's been this situation. Nobody got hurt, but I just want you to let you know that I have it and I'm on site and I'm taking care of it. I think if something goes wrong, you need to admit it, not admit fault. Just let them know that you have it, you're a leader, and that you're going to get it rectified. Don't just say, "Oh, it wasn't my fault." So, and that instills confidence in you from the homeowner. And I think a lot of times, if something goes bad on a job and they start picking stuff out, and you're behind the eight ball already, it's very hard to get that trust back, because then they're looking at everything. Terrible cut on the patio. Now he did this. What else is going wrong, right?
You've mentioned Grant Cardone a couple of times in this podcast. What was it about Grant Cardone, and where were you in your business that kind of drew you to him to help in any way?
So Grant is in the book. He's in the book. A little testimony in the book. We did some work with them, and I flew down to Miami, and I was on one of his shows, and we talked a lot about business and scaling and becoming. He's one that said, "Hey, it's not the best known. It's not the best at what you do. It's the best known, but you also have to do a good job." So that's kind of led me on the path to the social media, writing the book, and that whole thing. So I take that very serious now, right? Where it's work. It's work. You're doing the podcast. You got to edit it. You got to post it. But why do you do the podcast? Right?
Mostly to help out the industry, but also, like I said, it helps my business as well offline.
Yeah. So it's all. So you're doing the same thing. We're doing this together, right? So, yeah. So he is what he is, right? Like, guy started from nothing. I mean, some people like him, some people hate him. Whatever. They're doing something.
Yeah. I'll be honest with you. I'm not drawn to Grant Cardone. It's not like I don't like the guy. I just, I understand that there's different people for different types of people, right?
Absolutely.
And I get interested in why people were drawn to certain people and what they saw in them, basically.
Again, it's like you take the good from whoever, right? Everybody has something good.
Yes.
So you take the nuggets of the good and you move on. You take the nuggets from this person and you just try to put them together and become the best person that you can be.
Yeah. So the 10x sort of thing, on the surface level, 10x, people look at it and are like, 10x is crazy, go out of business really quick that way. I've seen 10x people go out of business really quick.
Oh, so we probably know the same people.
Okay.
I know we'll talk later, but I know you know the same people. Well, they're young. They're young, and they think they can,
And this is what I wanted to talk to you about. Do you embrace the 10x sort of mindset sort of thing, or do you pick and choose different points from it? I feel like when you're young, you attach onto it and you think like 10x, literally, I need to 10x again and again and again. But when you've been in business for as long as you have and you found Grant Cardone when you did, perhaps you had a different sort of philosophy on actually picking different things and applying them to your business in the correct way.
Yeah, we did some advertising with them. That's kind of how I met Robert. Robert was his old video guy. We advertised on his network 7 years ago, let's say. I mean, so what is your theory of the 10? Like, what is 10x to you? What is it? Go, 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 all in, spend everything? Like, what is that?
10x would be, as far as I understand, creating goals to 10x. And if you're needing to, 10x your sales, you need to 10x your marketing. You need to 10x your salespeople. But I don't see it literally as 10x. I see it as creating lofty goals and trying to achieve those goals by, actually spending money to be able to achieve those goals.
I mean, for me, it means if you think it's going to take 3 days, it's going to take you 6 days. Like, whatever you think it's going to take you, takes you 10 times effort. Whatever, right? Like, if you think posting 1 time a week is good, well, you should post 5 times a week. You know what I'm saying? So that's, for me, that's what it is, 10x. Like, it's always going to take more effort, more work, more time than you think. You know what it's like on the job. You guys can get that done in 2 days, when it's realistically it's not, but you think it can.
Was that something that was communicated clearly to you through Grant Cardone or the 10x as a whole, or was that something that they wasn't clearly stated, but you took it and applied it to that?
No, it's in. He says it somewhere. It somewhere. I think in his 10x, one of his books, Be Obsessed or Be Average. One of those. More effort, definitely effort. We can all do more effort. Everybody. I don't care who you are. You can always do more, right? That's why I'm still doing this at 65, right? Where I could, I'm still trying to learn and better myself, right? So I think if you stop doing that, then it's over, right?
Yeah, I honestly, to be completely frank with you, I have had interactions with 10x people in the past, and this has been the most pleasant one. All the other ones have been extremely not good. So
Why?
I
What do they say? Like,
oh, I've had when I was first starting the podcast, I've had people reach out to me saying that they're going to destroy me, they're going to do the exact same
why?
thing and stuff. I feel like that's the 10x sort of mindset
What do you
that
mean destroy you? Like you're just a hardscaper guy. Like,
oh, I know. I don't get it, but they were saying, yeah. And that's not just that. I've talked to other people who have said very similar things and have designed projects for 10x people that didn't pay the designer and or just ripped off the design completely. I've heard a lot of things. And that's sort of my
all I know
entry
is
into 10x.
I seen a couple train wrecks from those guys, and all I said was because I was like, son of a bitch, man. I've been doing this 40 years, and this son of a bitch comes along, and in 2 years, he's got this, this, and this. So then it starts playing with your head.
Right, exactly.
It's like, what the man? I'm killing myself here, man. I'm killing myself. Like, and then you see what happens, and it's like, there you go. There you go. So there's no magic bullet, right? There's
Yes.
no magic bullet to microwave success, right? It takes 20 years to become an overnight exec. So that just reinforced that, okay, so maybe I am doing it right, doing a good job, just being honest, slow and steady kind of thing. There's no quick fix to it, especially in this business. Oh my God.
Yeah, and like going back to, I feel like you found Grant at the right time with your maturity in business as well as personally, that you were able to take away that, you know what, it's going to take a lot of effort. It's going to take a lot longer than I think. And perhaps younger people kind of push that part aside and just think about the growth in 10x.
Well, they just see what you see on the internet. They see all the fancy and they think they
Yes,
can
yes.
just, and Grant started with nothing, by the way.
Yeah.
So, he earned everything he got. So
Mhm.
hats off to him. You guys can love him or hate him, but the guy was in a rehab at 25 and he built up from, so I take that from him, right? I take his work ethic. Guy still does like seminars on a Saturday for like 5 hours. I mean, the guy doesn't have to work. But so you take the good from everybody, but you can't get all sucked in.
This is Derek Lippert from Quiet Nature. We're going to take a turn from talking about employees, or perhaps you want to bring up employees with one of these three questions. First one, a horror story that you've experienced in your time in business. You've mentioned the growth part of 7 years ago, and that was difficult. Other things throughout this interview, but is there a specific horror story that you've experienced in your time in business that you'd want to share with us here?
Yeah, there's a few too many, but I'll keep it short. We do a lot of bid build work. So you have to understand that some large scale general contractors, if you're going to enter that game, you're swimming with sharks, and they're not all, you like to think that everyone is a genuine, honest person. And then you find out the hard way that they're not. And that can be costly and drain a lot of your energy, and you get into fights that you'd rather not get into. So there's that as, you just roll through it. It is what it is. Definitely some staff horror stories, the same. It comes down to the same fundamental thing. You think people are genuine and honest and trustworthy, and then they do things that you just can't yourself fathom another human doing. So there's that. So I guess it's being aware that not everyone is thinks or operates the way that you just sort of fundamentally feel that people should. From a construction standpoint, our biggest horror story is building a $100,000 swim pond and putting the wrong people in the wrong positions to build it, and it having so many leaks that you try to find for 6 months and eventually decide to rip the whole thing apart and rebuild it. So, that one's not great and very, very costly. And why I say if you're starting in water features and ponds and people are thinking about, oh, swim ponds sound cool, I'm going to jump into that next week because I got a chance to quote on one. Yeah, have fun. So
Thank you. Thank you.
have fun.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that there. And what's one thing that you're struggling with right now in your business?
It's crazy, but like right now, things just feel really good. Quite literally 2 to 3 years ago, I was assessing all my equipment and how much I could sell it for. And we've just made some real hard decisions and fundamental changes to the business. And I'm not struggling with so much right now. I guess it's really continuing to understand how to achieve the growth we want to achieve the next 3 years and do it in a clear, logical, sustained fashion. I have some good ideas on it, but it's not completely clear yet. So that's probably it. Yeah.
This is Glenn Curtis from Plantenance. I ask this to every business owner that comes on the show. This is a horror story from your time in business. It could be just like a difficult thing in the field that you experience or with clients or anything like that, just to help our contractors just starting out or early in business, to let them know what can happen in business and maybe put some guardrails in place to prevent it from happening to them. But Glenn, do you have a horror story that you'd want to share with us?
How much time do you have? You know what? I do and I don't, but I do have some in that. Horror stories, I usually look at them as learning experiences, because every bad thing that's happened, it's like we do with every job. We do what we call after-act assessments. We look at it, analyze it. Why did it go well? Why didn't? And one that comes to mind is I never used to take the time to set up the job ahead of time in terms of calling for the locates. And I remember when we first started out, we hit a gas line. I still remember that. I've hit gas lines, but we didn't call for anything. And I remember being called by my foreman, and he said, "You better get over here." And I still remember, because it felt like I was in a movie. I was driving around the corner. There must have been 20 fire trucks. There were firemen everywhere. There were police. The street was cordoned off. And all I remember is coming around the corner, and I heard one of the guys say, "So who's in charge?" And all my guys pointed to me. And I was really embarrassed because they were working on fixing this line. And what I learned from it was I didn't call it in. So I knew, and we didn't have a lot of money back then. And I knew I was going to get a big bill, which I did, to repair it. So that was kind of a horror story. I can tell you we learned real quick that to this day, we have a process that immediately, if we even think that the client is going to sign, we just go and ask for all the locates, so it's all ready to go. They're not allowed to go in the field in their package unless they have all the locates. But that was very embarrassing. But to me, that was a horror story, because I thought that was the end of our company. I didn't know if it was going to cost me $50,000. All I knew was they made me sign and said, "You're going to get a bill." And the client, also the homeowner, was pretty upset, as rightfully so, that I had to abandon half the neighborhood because I didn't do my job properly. That's probably the worst thing that's happened. Or if you want to look at it as a horror story, I thought you might get a kick out of this, because my staff did. When I started in snow removal, I had a brand new truck, a dump truck, a brand new Fisher plow back then. My wife was with me. I got a call after plowing for 40 hours to do a one-shot. And I got a little greedy, and I thought, all right, $40-50, I'd love it. And essentially I went out, did it. It was uneventful until on my way home. I didn't sleep a lot, and I went through a micro sleep. And all I remember is I was driving. I saw a stop sign. She was with me. I saw a police car parked at the side of the road. And for a split second, I fell asleep. And unfortunately, when I woke up, I plowed into the back of a police car writing a ticket at the side of the road. And there were two officers in there. They were not very happy. I pushed the trunk in. But when my team found out about that, to this day, I still haven't lived that one down. But I did a nice job on a police car by being greedy to go out and do a one-shot, but because I didn't sleep. So that's something that I've never lived down, but was pretty embarrassing. And to make it worse, I remember they asked me to wait because they have to call another squad car because they can't do their own report. And I started falling asleep again. And I remember my now wife, my business partner, getting mad at me because she thought I was going to get arrested, that they'd think I was intoxicated and that I couldn't stay awake. But no damage to my truck, but the police car didn't look very good when I was finished with it. So it was kind of embarrassing. And I actually wrote about that in one of my columns once. But to me, that's a bit of a horror story as well.
We want to take a break from today's episode to thank our sponsor, Knowledge Tree Consulting. They are efficiency consultants in the industry with 35 plus years of industry experience building Oriole landscaping in Toronto, which they are completely hands off at this point. George and Peter have been on the podcast before, and George, on multiple occasions now, I've personally leaned on him to help with the How to Hardscape headquarters software and how we can maximize the efficiency of user experience. And I know the guys at DTE Landscaping, Chuck and Jeffrey, who we've also had on the show multiple times, have hired them on in the past. Check out their consulting services, peer groups, and events that are coming up on their website, knowledgetreeconsulting.com, or check them out on Instagram at joinktc. Now back to our episode.
This is Kurt from Country Creek Homes. I asked this next question, Kurt, to every business owner that comes on the show. It's a horror story you've experienced in your time in business. Could be just a headache or something that happened, whether on site or dealing with a client, or we were talking about payment. It could be a payment thing, but this is more so to help out our contractors that are just getting started, give them a little bit of taste of what can happen, maybe put some safety guards in place to prevent it from happening to them. But Kurt, do you have a horror story you'd want to share with us?
Yeah, I really do. And I thought I know we were going to talk about this, so I thought about it a little bit because I really wanted something that was it fit. And I would say the worst instance I came across was during COVID. My company was really, like, at the time, like, we were maybe a year or two old, and we had set this project. It was a great project. We were ready to go. Products, everything was scheduled and ready. We went into day one. Before we started, like the night before, I just went to the dealer, made sure everything's good to go, and we're ready for delivery for this day. Day one, we show up, and I find out my stone for that project is gone. It was sold off. Or just didn't make it to the, and I mean, I'm sure operating through COVID, material was crazy. It was like you had to order, if you didn't order your product in May or June, you were not getting it, whether it was the most common product or something special, like getting something specialty. If you didn't order it early on, you were not getting it that year. So like a simple product, like very common, it was gone. It just wasn't available to me. My order was gone. There was a lot of opinions from the homeowner about how that was handled, and it got a little bit ugly. Like day one, it was pretty rough, and we almost just said, you know what, we're gonna move on. Like, I think you need to find somebody else because this escalated a lot. You know what? I ended up smoothing it over with them, and not so much because I had to have the job. It was more just because I don't like leaving things, like I don't want to leave things unfinished or not handled properly. So we smoothed it over. We ended up switching to the same stone but thicker. Like, it was more like rated for vehicular traffic as opposed to residential. So it cost a little bit more on us. I ended up eating the cost of it just to, keep things kind of smooth. But that was a situation. Like, I was there, my guys were there, the homeowners were on the driveway, and there's like, how can you run a business like this? Like, you're starting today and you don't have your project. Oh my God, it was ugly. But it was just one of those things. Like, it was paid. It was ready to go. It just disappeared. The wrong person picked it up and loaded it up onto someone's truck instead of saying we're out of stock on it. So it's no one's fault. It's just, that was something and very early in my, in the ownership of Country Creek. Yeah, that was something to deal with for sure. But you know what? That project went so well. Like, we finished it. It turned out amazing. Like, the homeowners were great. They bought us sandwiches, like whole lunch and stuff at the end of the project. They loved it. They didn't listen to my original design plan, and they kind of wanted to pivot a little bit. So they ended up calling me back a few weeks later to expand onto the project. So it ended up great. It just, that was a really, that was stressful opening to a project for sure.
Definitely. But ends in a good note. They even brought you back. So obviously you smooth things over really well.
And they ended up actually bringing me back a few years later for for some interior work. It didn't end up going through, but they called me back, and I talked to them like everything was good. So it worked out really well. But yeah, that was definitely a horror story to talk about.
This is Elmer of Potted Luck. I asked this next question because sometimes the answer has to do with payments. Elmer, do you have a horror story in your time in business that you'd want to share with our audience? And we ask this just because a lot of our audience maybe just starting out, or maybe, smaller in their startup of their business. So just to help them understand what can happen in the industry and maybe put some guardrails in place to prevent it from happening to them. But Elmer, do you have a horror story from your time in business that you'd want to share?
Every business has that horror story to some level. And I've contemplated your question, like when you sent it to me initially. I'm like, I really don't have like an absolute horror story. I am also a person that I block out the bad things that happen. I actually forget it. But there's one incident that I remember, is that a subcontractor, which is my fault too. Like I'll take blame for whatever happens on our job sites. But he hit a gas line going to the house. He was installing a fence, and the dig lines were confirmed. He was off to the side a little bit. He was putting in fence posts, and it wasn't directly on it, but he happened to hit it, and he put his fence in, and like nobody knew. And until like 3 months later on a weekend that the client smelled gas, and they called the gas company, and yeah, there was gas oozing out of the ground. Like, this was after everything was paid for and all that. So that's it's that's kind of a horror story. I mean, I don't like that to happen. So yeah, how could it have been avoided? I don't know. Just the dig lines were pretty clear. Did the subcontractor, get close? Yes, it was. He was digging. It was 3 feet down, and it was right at the bottom, and like it was, everything was concreted in afterward. It's funny when I seen the pictures of it, but that's probably the best I can come up with, I think.
This is Shane from Novak Landscapes. This next question I ask every hardscape business owner that comes on the show, especially after talking about payments, because sometimes it has to do with that. But this is a horror story that you've or your dad has experienced in your time in business. Could be payment related, could be on the job site related. But this is more so to help those contractors just getting started. Things that can happen to business owners to maybe help them put safeguards in place so that doesn't happen to them or anything like that. But Shane, do you have a horror story from your time in business that you'd want to share?
As far as payment, I think there's been a few difficult customers in the past, but for the most part, I think things have worked out. We try to really smooth things over as much as possible and not burn any bridges, but obviously that is sometimes not possible in business, and you work with a lot of people over a lot of years. That's going to happen. As far as on the job site horror stories, there's one that came to my mind in Goffstown, and thankfully it was nothing that we did, but it was a new development, and we were building a large raised patio, and right up against the foundation that we were going to be putting the raised patio on was some of the worst backfill I've ever seen in my entire life. And it was never ending. And at the time, we only had a E35 excavator, small Bobcat, and we would have to build benches down so we could continue digging further and further down. It was just mulch, stumps, logs. It smelled terrible. And thankfully, we had space to dump the material behind the property. They had some acreage, but we were like, the amount of structural fill that we're going to have to put in here is going to be absurd. So as soon as I think it was day one we got into that, as soon as the homeowner came home from work, we showed him right off the bat, this is what we're working with. We're going to have to go way deeper than we normally would have. I think we worked something out with mainly just charging them for materials and a little bit of extra time. So it kind of wasn't great for us, but we don't want to build anything that we can't put our name on. So it ended up working out. It still looks good to this day, thankfully. But it was like every scoop of the bucket. I was like, I have pictures of it, and I'm like, I can't even believe that we're pulling out like 24-inch wide trees from right up against people's foundation, and it's 10 feet in the ground. I'm like, how? This is crazy. So yeah, that got pulled out of there.
Oh man, that's rough. Oh,
and then we hit
smell,
water.
I can only imagine the smell.
Oh, it was brutal, and it was on a slope. We were getting a ton of rain.
Oh,
so then we couldn't. We work out of the back of our trucks a lot with the excavators and skid steers. So then we're putting everything in the trucks, backing it up to the back of the property and dumping it. And then I think we had like a week of rain, and we couldn't even get the trucks up and down the slope. We're pushing them with the excavator. So we had to pull out for a couple of days, do a couple of the small jobs until it dried out. And then it was back to the nightmare.
But the job got done, and it still looks good to this day. So that's great.
Yep. Yep.
Thank you for listening to today's podcast episode. Once again, if you want to hop on our How to Hardscape headquarters software this offseason, now is your chance for the next couple of months here before the end of 2026. On board with us within 30 days, and you can get 6 months for free. We thank you as always for listening to the How to Hardscape podcast. 6 years. We just passed that milestone. So thank you so much for continuing to watch, sharing, following, rating, reviewing, whatever you do, it all really does help. So thank you so much for that. And before we leave you, I want to say thank you to our sponsors. Cycle CPA, if you're looking for bookkeeping, accounting, CFO services, reach out to Cycle CPA at cyclecpa.com. Let them know How to Hardscape sent you for money off their services there. PatioSEO.com. And now you know Patio SEO can take your hardscape business to the next level. James Reed and his expert team have built a reputation on success, not just for their own companies, but for hundreds of others just like yours. So don't wait. Visit PatioSEO.com to learn more and get started. But also be sure to follow James's journey on Instagram at Road to 100 M's. That's Road to 100 MS for behind the scenes tips and insights. And I do recommend checking that out and following along to that. Ready to build your brand? Patio SEO is here to help you every step of the way. And Knowledge Tree Consulting. George and Peter there are efficiency consultants in our industry, and I've had the privilege of having them both on one episode of the How to Hardscape podcast, and George multiple other times. Always great episodes, and I also got to sit down on a one-on-one with George and went through what they do for businesses, and I left that meeting with a lot of value, so I can't recommend them enough. If you want to learn more about what they do, go to knowledgetreeconsulting.com and get that conversation started with them today. And we look forward to meeting you next week on the How to Hardscape podcast.